You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
What is up, good people? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Yes, you are hearing another one of those intros. What do I mean by one of those intros? I mean an intro not recorded in the shred shed with the nice mics and all that stuff. Those nice Lewitt mics. Oh yeah, baby. Love that thing. No. You're hearing this recorded in a less than optimal position because, well, quite frankly, my car's engine seized this weekend. And it left me and the fam temporarily stranded on the Oregon coast. It's not as bad as it sounds. Could have been a lot worse, and I'm glad that it wasn't. So it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. But just know that I'm recording this outside under some small cover, hoping that we can get this resolved relatively soon. But I wanted to try to keep this on schedule as much as possible. I actually thought I was going to have to delay it, but it looks like I think I can actually pull this off. Thank you to Nick Veland, Playback Engineering, for making that possible. Anyway, all that aside, this episode is with my good friend, Jinna Kim from Meris. Now, she was a little bit reluctant to come on this episode because she's not like a gear person in the traditional sense of the people that usually come on the show, the players, the designers of the actual hardware or software or that. But she is an extremely important person, in my opinion, in the gear world for a multitude of reasons. And she has a great eye for design. She has a great eye for all these things that make Meris special. And I really wanted to get her on because I really appreciate how her brain works, and I really appreciate the way she thinks about things, and I really appreciate the skills and the angle that she brings to the gear world. And she's actually worked on some things that you probably didn't know that she worked on outside of Meris, which is really, really cool, and I wanted to get her on to talk about all that. So, without further ado, let's get into this episode with my buddy, Jinna Kim from Meris. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have a very special guest, Jinna Kim from Meris. What's going on?
It's going, Blake. Good to have you. I'm just really excited to be here. First time here.
First time here, but like the 4 billionth time we've had a long conversation, right? Or so?
Definitely.
But yet, in amongst all those conversations, there are still things that I don't know about you. And that is kind of what I wanted to have you on here for. And so for the listeners who are not maybe as familiar, you probably know the Meris brand. They've been supporting the show for a long time. The fellows have been on multiple times, telling their story and talking about stuff. But Jinna is like the one that is responsible for all the stuff you see. And she's also been responsible for other stuff in the gear world, too, from an aesthetic perspective and from a design, like a visual perspective. And I wanted to get you on to tell your story because I don't think that's out there enough. And I think you have a lot more interesting stuff to say than maybe you think you do. So here we go.
That's so kind. I'm surprised that anyone is curious to ask me anything and to hear what anything I have to say. So, I mean, I think that Terry and Angelo should be here, because this is their platform and expertise. But Yeah.
They have been here, though. It's your turn. It's your turn. They want to share the spotlight a little bit. Yeah. Let's let you have the floor. So, I mean, tell me your story. From your perspective, you are involved with Meris super heavily. Everything that we see from the promotional side and from the brand side, everything is you. But how did you get into this in the first place? I'm not just talking about with Meris exclusively, but like, what is your background and how did you develop this eye?
Yeah. How far back should I go?
As far back as you want to go. We got all the time in the world.
Well, professionally, my background is branding specifically and graphic design. I knew I wanted to be specifically a graphic designer since I was 16.
Whoa.
So I don't know if where you're at, if they have anything in your public schools called ROP. But over here in California, they have these after school programs called ROP. They're called regional occupational programs. And so already at 16, after I was going to high school, I took an ROP class specifically called graphic design. And so that was my focus in life. And so, yeah, I think the first professional job that I've ever had was when I was maybe 21. I worked for a company called lynda.com.
Yeah. I'm familiar.
Okay. You are? Okay.
They used to advertise on podcasts. That's how I'm familiar with them.
Yeah. So I worked my way up to be the video manager there. And I was the video editor. And I was just so lucky to be able to work for what I feel was the leading force of web design, graphic design, visual design that ever existed in the world. She was cream of the crop, the best. Linda Wyman. They got acquired by LinkedIn.
Wow.
Yeah, so and I actually put aside college because I was actually talking directly to Linda, and I, expressed how much I was really interested in getting into the video department. It was just my dream to do that. And she said, you can, the position's open for you. But I also expressed that I wanted to go to school. So I actually put off college to work for her for several years.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that can be at that time, that was, I think now it's talked about a little more openly, and like, not everybody needs college, or you don't have to go to college right away, or it's people are a little more flexible in their viewpoint. But at that time, that was probably viewed in some communities as like, oh, or you're throwing your life away, kid. What are you doing? Like,
no, not at all.
No?
I felt like it was an opportunity of a lifetime to work for her. And opportunities don't come often,
School's not going anywhere, right?
School's not going anywhere. And that's exactly what she told me.
Yeah.
So after college, I started to look at visual effects houses and design houses in LA. I lived in Los Angeles. And I worked at various companies, and the first company that I worked for after college was a machine girl for a VFX house.
A machine girl? What's that?
Yeah. So they called it a machine girl as slang, but you worked in a machine room, and pretty much what that was there was patch bays, there were high-end decks for episodics. So, and you can kind of think of it as an assistant editor.
Okay.
So I was in there helping out editing and patch bays for high-end compositing systems. They were called flame systems. Anyway, so I was doing that at the age of 26. And it was not often that a woman was working in that department. And so they would call me Machine Girl in there.
Sounds like some sort of superhero name.
So in a sense, even though Terry and Angelo, who are, I feel, the masters at sound, I do come from sort of a world where I understood signal flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I interned with multiple, prominent design firms and houses in LA, and I did a lot of mock-ups and visual concepts for shows, for branding, any video games, various television titles, tons of projects. And so that was my professional background.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, when you were referring to design houses, because that's not a world that I'm super familiar with.
Yeah.
You kind of explained it there at the end. That was like, are you working in film? Is it commercials? Is it print?
It's various clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Various clients.
Got it. So sounds like you were wearing a lot of hats from the jump, and maybe have been doing that since your late 20s, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from there, when did you break into working on like musical equipment and things like that?
That was unexpected. So, Terry happens to be my husband, and he's the founder of Meris. And, he was working at Line 6.
Mm-hmm.
And right around the time where he was maybe in his 30s, right? He was talking to me about the notion of doing his own thing. And so, I was very supportive, and I said, sure, if you want to do your own thing, I'll help you brand your own company. And so, back then I branded a company called Strymon.
Mm-hmm.
So, I created the name and in our 2-bedroom apartment, and did the entire visuals and branding of that company and Meris.
And where did that name come from? It's so cool. It feels like something out of Blade Runner or something. Where did that inspiration come from? For both of the names.
Yeah, so branding any company for me, especially when it was for ourselves, it takes quite a while. So I started branding Strymon since 2007.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just taking my time. It's just casual. I'm just showing Terry, hey, what do you think about this name? What do you think about that name? And I'm used to clients, and Terry's pretty picky. So he kept saying, no. And so I would just take my time with it. And, I have a full-time job, and I'm just doing that on the side or on weekends.
Yeah.
So I came across this name, Strymon, and it's Greek myth. I'm really into Greek mythology too. And so I saw, there's a name that I've never seen before. It's a river god.
Okay.
And that there's a short story where it, hooked up with a character named Euterpe, which is the muse of music. And I thought, he's kind of like then the father of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so I said, what do you think about that name? And he loved it. And then, it is.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you started doing stuff, and I know like we're not going to get into all of the interconnections here, but at some point you guys decided to strike out on your own and do Meris. And
yeah, he left in. So Terry worked with Strymon, but I defined the brand and the aesthetics entirely. So basically, I created the template of the face of the company, and everywhere from packaging. What I was helping out Terry, and then but there was a point where Terry decided to leave, and so he left in 2012, and then he wanted to do his own thing, and so I helped him brand Meris that it is today.
And what's the story with that name?
Well, so actually, before I talk about Meris,
Sure.
So prior to that, for a whole year, Terry and I were we created a blog, an art and engineering blog called 7 Electron. It was one of our passions on the side. So one of the things that we always talked about doing is that we wanted to make art where he does the engineering side of things and I do the art side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we created a blog where I curated also other artists that created art that sort of had those incorporated together, which was engineering and art. And so I got to interview a lot of artists. So this was prior to Meris. And again, I'm just taking my time with it, working as well as running this art blog. And then when I started to brand Meris, that was around 2013. And so actually I was branding Meris a year prior to launching the company.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And obviously it seems like you pulled some inspiration from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the
so
blog.
What I was going to say is that, so the Meris ethos kind of stems from that. One of our ethos, it says uniting art and engineering. It stems from 7 Electrons, which was our blog again. And so we launched Meris, and that's how Angelo Mazzocco joined in, an incredible, mind-blowing DSP engineer and my partner today. And when we launched together in 2014.
And I remember when it came out too, which is interesting because even in 2014 there were a lot of effects companies out there, not like there is now, but it was becoming it was kind of forming into what it is now. And it was when Pro Guitar Shop was still chugging along. I hadn't quite started yet in the world. I think my first post was actually, it's coming up here, was in March of 2015. It was my first ever social media post, basically. Okay. And it was an old 1965 Ampeg J12 sitting on the floor of this shed that I built. And then, so it was this weird, I feel like there was something in the water in 2014, 2013, 2015, because a lot of brands and media outlets in this world launched around that time. Stringjoy started in 2014. There was just a handful of companies that, for whatever reason, decided that now was the time to go.
Oh, that's cool.
And not all of them are still around, but a lot of them are. So I feel like there was something in the water at that time. I don't know what it was, where we all had this harebrained idea that we could strike out as independent entities for some reason.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Just being foolish and just going for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how sweet we were. How young and innocent we were. But when you guys did that, so obviously there was the Strymon launch too. So it wasn't exactly your first rodeo, but did you have an idea of what you wanted this to grow into, or were you just like, we're just going to put these products out and see what happens?
Okay. Well, so again, my background is in branding. I'm used to branding companies. I've also branded a well-known number one stop motion app called Dragon Frame. And that, so, branding is not, it's just my expertise. And so when we started Meris, it was going to emphasize the pro audio heritage that Terry and Angelo have. And so to this day, all the products carry that level of quality. So that was what was different with Meris.
Right. And what was this like when you were going, I don't know what your branding process looks like, which is actually maybe something that would be fun to get into. Like when you're envisioning what this company looks like, what were the inspirations you were pulling from and all that jazz?
So yeah, well, I can talk about originally, with Strymon, I was very much thinking about, the branding style that, the famous art director Paul Rand did for famous companies like IBM. He's done like UPS, ABC, stuff like that. And he's like the modernist, like master American art director. So I was very much inspired by him. And back then, even in 2007, the brands, when Terry was asking me, I want to start my own thing, the first thing I do is research, well, what's out there currently, and I noticed that it just wasn't, back then it was very different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Just this rocker sort of look to everything. And that just wasn't what I was envisioning for this new brand. And I tend to lean towards minimalism naturally. And so that was the style that I was thinking, particularly, in the 1960s IBM kind of feel. Yeah. And so there was that. But Meris, when I branded Meris, and again, this is not a literal extension of who we are. It's a brand, there's, logical things when, you have a partnership, right? This is not of one person, particularly for our team, right? Because Meris is co-owned by Terry, Angela, and myself. So there's that, depending on if when someone is asking me if they want to brand a company, I'm thinking about, okay, is it one person? What's the identity, right? Is it a partnership? What is that?
Right.
But when you're asking me about inspirations, going back to answering a question, when I branded Meris, we were living in Los Angeles. In fact, in Van Nuys. Okay. We were living there. And so living in Van Nuys, I was thinking more of like an urban kind of feel to it too. And so I was, and I focused on bringing in a lot of local artists from Los Angeles, since we were living in Los Angeles too. So we're connecting a lot with local artists around there. And yeah, so that was kind of the feel.
Hey, Rocky.
What's up, Vincent?
Did you hear about the latest?
Latest what?
The latest drop from Meris. It's totally insane.
No, tell me more.
Meris just released Enzo X.
What's that?
Enzo X is a supernova expansion from the original Enzo into the highest quality and most flexible studio synthesizer ever created in a pedal format.
Whoa!
Enzo X combines 5 synth types, 5 drives, 3 reverbs, and 5 modulations. It also includes a full 2.5 second stereo delay, all in one pedal.
That sounds hard to use.
It's not. The UI is from the same family as the Mercury X and the LVX. It's super easy to dive in and see exactly what you are tweaking in real time.
Oh, I see. It's right there on the screen.
Yep.
Is it just for guitars, though?
Nope. You can plug almost anything into the Enzo X, including your MIDI controller.
That sounds incredible. Where do I get it?
You can pick up Enzo X online at Meris.us or at any of their fine retailers across the globe.
Did you just say across the globe?
They know what I meant.
Wait, are we getting paid for this?
I'm still waiting on that cash money from last time.
He better at least give us pizza for dinner.
I'm not giving him his Enzo X back until he does.
For more information, make sure you check out Meris.us, and apparently I have to go order a pizza. How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services, and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff. And then when you're doing, like, so for Meris, I've always had this, and this is probably just injecting different parts of your guys' personality, I imagine, but a lot of the intrigue, I think, before I knew you, before I knew anything about anything, I just saw the products and I saw the website. And, you know, and the social media activity and everything too. And some of the things just really spoke to me. Like there seems to be, and this is just, maybe this is completely incorrect, and this is just the things I'm pulling from it because
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, we see what we want to see, right? But in a lot of the stuff, there's like this kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Sort of like not in everything, but in some elements of it, there's this undercurrent of sci-fi that I get, that I really like, because I just love it. I mean, like there's some like Philip K. Dick vibes in there, and you know, just some Stanley Kubrick vibes in 100%. Some of it, you know. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know what this has to do with anything, but I love it. You know, type of thing. And so I there's some like kind of like 70s and 80s, like the non-cheese parts of the 70s and 80s that I feel like are injected in here in, you know, tasteful amounts as well, if that makes any sense. And so I don't know where all that comes from or if it's even 100% accurate, but all that stuff really spoke to me as a consumer.
Thank you. That's so nice of you. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about a concept, so typically when Angelo is designing the next instrument.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually asking him, first and foremost, like what's the vibe? What's the inspiration? That's when sonically speaking, right? And then and how would I interpret that visually? So you're talking about the visuals and also our launches,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah. And then on top of that, we're around kind of the same age. So we're Gen Xers. So we grew up with movies, in the 80s, right? And, in the 70s as well. And that's just kind of what we grew up with, And on top of that, it's also inspirations of gear from the guys and a lot of time the guys are explaining to me the history of gear and also, what they really just loved during those times, what they respected. And so if it is inspiration, for instance, we just recently launched Enzo X. And so there's a lot of inspiration from Oberheim and Moog and Yamaha. He's always talking about Yamaha, like CS80. And that's their passion, right? And then how do I interpret those, that feel, right? And so, I just think about, okay, what's the visuals that I want to sort of represent in a fun way? Yeah.
Do you have, because some of these things look like they are a part of a story, right? There's something happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, what's really happening is there's a product launch coming up. But, from a consumer perspective, I'm sitting here looking at this guy sitting in what appears to be, a wood paneled kind of 70s vibe hotel room sitting at his desk. And I'm like, what's he doing? What's he, what's he doing here? He looks like he's got something going on. It looks like it's a scene from a movie. Is there a story that you're crafting in your head fully, or is it more just like, I really like this aesthetic and this is what we're going to lean into?
Yeah, I am, say first and foremost, I am a terrible salesperson and I'm like horrible at marketing. And, I say this, wholeheartedly because although I absolutely love design and branding, that doesn't mean that you're a good salesperson.
Oh no, those are separate skills for sure.
I think that practically speaking, right, when people are launching, it's probably best to explain things, just its capabilities, right? But I don't choose to do that. And I think the guys are into that too. It's going back to uniting art and engineering, right? It's like we can go towards more of a practical level of explaining things, right? Having breakout text where it explains all the capabilities and parameters, right? And instead, what I do is I just want to create a mood, a feeling of what we want to represent of this product more so than anything else. And so, if you're talking about the recent launch of Enzo X.
Yeah, you've done it in other ways with maybe different vibes.
For sure.
But similar concept in that, like, what's this little girl doing in the middle of nowhere?
Oh,
like,
Hydra, yeah.
Yeah. It's like there you had this kind of I don't want to call it like broken story, but like incomplete story that we never get to hear the rest of. But I feel it makes me feel like that there is one, and I kind of make one in my brain, whether there is or not, things like that.
So towards the end of the project, what typically happens is I'll ask Angelo to demo his creation, and we all sit down and we listen to his demo. And as I'm listening, I'm just soaking it all in. all the sounds that he's creating with it, right? And it's just a really exciting time. And so as I'm listening to the sounds, it inspires me on a vibe or a feeling that I want to create, when we end up launching or creating images. It's a personality that I try to convey, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
So have you ever considered, this is just me thinking out loud here, have you ever considered taking some of these characters, for lack of a better word, and fleshing them out more in another style, in like a more complete media source?
I haven't gone there. I don't even know. I mean, if people are interested, but
because I every time I see something, I'm like, what's going on? I don't know what is going on. I know that it's a product release, but I also feel like this could be a movie or a comic book or something,
Yeah. I haven't even thought that far down the road on, continuing that. I'm just doing what is fun for our team. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is a really fun project and I want to give it my all. But I can't do it without the help of certain directors or visual effects help from other people. But it's just, that's just what I did in the past with, really talented, amazing team of people. And it's just applying what, my strengths.
Yeah.
For the team. Yeah. And you were mentioning sci-fi. It's the guys are hugely into sci-fi, and my favorite movie, maybe Blake, is Aliens. The second one, Aliens.
Yep.
And so a lot of the inspiration also comes from, and the visuals are heavily inspired by science fiction. Just even naming our products comes from sci-fi.
Yeah. Which speaks to my soul. I love sci-fi and horror especially. And then when the two
you
meet,
mentioned you like horror.
Oh, I'm a big messed up horror fan. It's It's not good. It's I'm like, what's the most messed up thing I can find? Where is it? I gotta find it.
Like gore and stuff, or
sure. Yeah, whatever. Does it make most people like squeamish or uncomfortable? Then I'm probably gonna want to watch it.
Wow.
Something's wrong with me. I don't know what.
No. Like, does it sometimes make you laugh too while watching some of that stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if something's really campy, but I'm not really into gore or horror. I really like thrillers, but I just don't have the strength to see.
Which would make sense why you prefer Aliens. I prefer Alien, the first one. I love both of those movies, but I prefer the first one. And I could see why you like the second one better. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a childhood sort of nostalgia with it too, because I grew up with a lot of boys in the family. Like all my cousins were boys, and I grew up with a brother. And so really what happened was, when I was growing up as a kid, they always wanted to play aliens.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, well, somebody has to play Ripley. So
hey, that's not a bad character to emulate.
They would build these guns with Lego blocks, and we would just be outside playing it. And so there's a sentimental sort of attachment to the movie too. Yeah. For me.
Yeah. Well, and it comes through in some of the stuff you do too.
Yeah, for sure.
I realize I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, because I haven't really talked about it publicly much, and I'm not sure if it's ever going to really see the light of day in the way that we had originally envisioned. But back in maybe 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Maybe it was a little after that. The years get a little blurry now. I can't really remember, but it was definitely pre-COVID. Started working on a project where we were going to make some pedals, and
cool.
The concept behind it was we wanted to we thought we would give every pedal a name, of course, but we literally thought about it being the name of people. Like we'd call it like we, and we might still do this. It's possible, but like we would literally give them like somewhat familiar names. And then from that concept came like, well, what if and this was definitely inspired by some of your stuff. We were like, well, it was like you would do these flashes that I thought that I'm interpreting as having a story to them, right? And I'm going, well, why didn't I didn't put this all together in my brain until we were having this conversation. Now I'm realizing that this is all interlinked together.
Oh, cool. I want to hear it.
So we were like, what if every one of these had its own name? And then I was like, what if the name also was a character?
Yeah.
And in a story. And it was like, oh, well, how are we going to make the story? You know, how do we want to make it, you know, actually a written thing? Do we want to make it a movie? Like that seems like a little out of budget for a startup company. Like, what are we gonna do here? And so we settled on the idea of making comics.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I wrote a comic and worked with the local artist to get the first launch off the ground. And unfortunately, the project sort of fizzled. But the comic did get finished. And
I
so
gotta see this.
I've been sitting on this comic for like I don't know how many years at this point. And
will you share it with me?
Sure. Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. It turned out really, really great, I think. And it was, you know, the original pedal was going to be a time-based effect, so the comic is time travel based.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, there you go. See, you know, it's connected. Yeah. That's really cool. It's just like, you know, it's just the journey, right? It's like I mean, again, you can go about it just what existed prior or what's most practical, right? Probably would be best for sales.
Sure.
Or I think what our team tends to do is just to do what we love and just have fun with it, you know? Yeah. And so I think that sounds, what you're doing sounds super authentic and fun.
I hope that maybe we can get it back on the road one of these days. Things just got so derailed during COVID, and we kind of had to like buckle down and focus on what we were already doing that was working, and not get too distracted, because I'm very good at getting distracted with fun, shiny new projects. Like that's something I could really spin out of control with really quite easily. So I have to remind myself sometimes, like, hey, you know, what's buttering your bread right now? You need to pay attention to that stuff. But I hope that can, you know, maybe one day see the light of day. And we already had, we got so far as to like start making concepts for other comics and stuff. And it was like kind of the thought was like we could have it be part of the whole brand ethos, but also, you know, more stuff to pull from that wasn't just product, not just beating people over the head with product all the time. You know, it was like, if we can get people invested in some of these characters and their stories and be able to kind of have more to do, almost kind of creating a mini media company within a hardware company was kind of the concept of it. But we'll see if that ever actually takes flight. Hopefully one of these days.
That sounds so cool.
But yeah, I'll definitely send you the comic, the digital form anyway. We never printed them, but I'll send that to you when we get done here. I'd love to get your take on it.
I'm sure I would love it.
It's pretty weird.
That's even better. That's even better.
So when you guys are, you know, thinking about doing a new product, and I'm sure the wheels are constantly turning on these things, at what point do you feel like you really step in? Because obviously the guys are in there making the sounds and, you know, creating the hardware and side of it and making that physical thing. But when do you feel like you really step into the equation?
Well, so, you know, my title is creative director, but, you know, we pretty much built the company from the ground up. So I'm actually really occupied with operations.
I'm
a
sure.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. So I'm constantly busy with that. Probably like 50% of the time,
Yeah, I
and
knew that.
sometimes
Yeah.
I'm even replying to even customer service emails because our team is so small. It's right now 5 total right now. So I'm wearing a lot of hats, and but I do everything again from package design to website design, everything visual for the company, not just for launches, but self-taught with photography, learning videography. I've been doing like videos. So the demos are all done by me. It's just me filming Angelo too. Been doing that forever for, from lynda.com days of creating tutorials.
Yeah.
And so yeah, all of that, doing various stuff.
Yeah. I knew that you had your hands full with it's how running a small business goes. You don't get to do one thing in a small business. It's not a thing. that's not or even a bigger business. Like I used to work at a really massive company, but the facility I worked at only had like 7 people there. So in any situation where there's a lot to take care of and not that many people to do it, you tend to end up wearing a huge amount of hats.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's the smartest way to go about business.
I think it's completely necessary though, unless you want to take on a ton of debt or something right at the top, or have some sort of insane financial backing, that it's hard. It's hard to see how somebody bootstraps something without the founders having to do a ton of work for a long time.
Yeah. When we, developed LVX with a completely new architecture and everything like that, which by the way, I designed the UI and UX for that. And that was my first time ever designing UI for any
Great
pedals.
job.
Thank you.
You made a very in-depth, almost daunting pedal. Very easy for me to understand.
It was my first stab at it. And what I was going to get at is that, we developed that during 2020, during the lockdown. And it was developed by 4 people total. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a deep pedal for 4 people.
Yeah, it was Terry Burton who did the hardware. Angelo did the DSP, and Angelo Mazzocco and John Reeves did the software engineering, and I did the UI. And it's just 4 total. And that was crazy. That almost killed me. But I just can't believe, I'm just amazed that we pulled it off. Just from our small team.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're gonna like what you find.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
I remember when you called me when it was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months before it was launched, and we were talking about it. I was wandering around in my yard barefoot for some reason.
You remember that detail? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember why I remember that. I remember standing in the grass like with no shoes on, which is not something I normally do.
Isn't that amazing how our memory, it's like we could remember little pockets of information.
But I remember you describing it to me and telling me all the stuff that it was going to do, and I was sitting there going like, I hope I can like understand this when it shows up.
Yeah, it's wild what the guys were able to do with how complex these pedals are. It is amazing, an amazing feat they were able to accomplish. Yeah, and I feel very privileged to be part of that for sure. And also just the that Angelo had so much trust in me to create something that I've never done before. That was a big deal.
So moving on from that a little bit, but still talking about a similar thing.
Yeah.
Then let's get into more stuff that you've never done before.
Oh, which one?
Predator.
That's a lot.
Predator.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a good. So for the people who don't know what that is, maybe we should explain that first.
Yeah. So LVX, Mercury X. For those who don't know, LVX, Mercury X, and our most recent release, Enzo X, are our modular systems, which has just a ton of parameters. And so LVX is our delay system and Mercury X is our reverb system, right? With multiple parameters in there in a modular architecture format, in a pedal format. And then Enzo X is our synthesizer in a pedal format. And I'm working currently on a desktop editor and librarian. And currently what's out there is a free desktop editor librarian for LVX and Mercury X. And I'm currently working on it for Enzo X. And what I was going to get at is I've never designed an app, software app in my life. But I was all for it. I felt like, well, first of all, for those who wanted to get up to speed, right, and organize their libraries and get going with this, and then unlock the potential and speed, right? Because you can do everything in the box, but I was for it as long, because it's a free software. So I'm like, okay, I think I could do this,
right?
And then and so that is what I developed with one other person, Bo Gunderson, who is our software developer for Predator. I'm very lucky. He's my friend of 19 years, and then overseen by Terry and Angelo. Yeah, it's wild that I did that.
So did you? I imagine, this is just me guessing here, that you took some of the lessons from developing the UI and ported some of that knowledge, even though it's a different interface that you're working with. Did it cross over at all, those skills, or did you have to just kind of start from scratch both times?
So Predator, it's completely different. It's the purpose of that one was that it's all laid out.
Mm-hmm.
No menu diving, hardly much.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's going well. I'm really lucky to have gotten good feedback from people who are using it, and it's just amazing to be able to hear what people think of it and how they're putting it to use. So that's crazy. Yeah.
So stepping back a little bit, when we were talking about before we started talking about Predator, we started going through the most recent units, and there's this X theme, and I think some people have a bit of a misconception on what that actually stems from. So maybe you can explain that story a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So like I don't want people to think that we're really into Elon Musk or anything, because that's a good point. Let me think. So in January 2020, we collaborate with Joel Chase Bliss to release the CXM 1978.
Yes.
And people didn't really catch that. And you were mentioning about sci-fi because we love sci-fi. And a lot of times people didn't even know that CXM means Chase Bliss times Meris.
Really? People didn't catch that?
Some people didn't catch that, but it's also gives a nod to Thix 1138. So CXM 1978. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the look of the pedal, how it's all white, and all of that was inspired by that movie.
Okay.
So the X sort of use was because of the collaboration. Then when we were working for 2 full years in creating LVX, our delay modular system. So hopefully people check that out if they haven't. That name, can I explain to you that name?
Please do.
People didn't fall asleep by now. Seriously, like there's probably I feel really bad for everybody. That's they probably but
they're still here. The average listen time, according to Spotify, the average listen time is 47 minutes.
That's amazing.
So people really do stick around for these things.
Okay. Well, if people really want a good night of sleep, let's go. Let's talk about.
Let's get it. Let's talk about names. I want to know about names.
Well, okay. So when we named LVX, there's a story behind that, and it's again another sci-fi story.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you ever see iRobot? That movie with Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually based off of an Isaac Asimov short story, sci-fi short story called Robot Dreams. So in 1986, actually, he wrote. Let me go back. He actually wrote a bunch of short stories, and so I can tell you the story about one of his story called Robot Dreams, in which there was a robot called LVX-1, or he was named LVX for short.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this robot was described with a fractal design brain that mimicked the human brain. Anyways, the story goes that there was a doctor named Dr. Calvin, and the robot LVX or LVX told Dr. Calvin that he had a dream. And the dream was that all the robots had a revolt against the 3 laws of robotics, or basically serving humans above all else. And so he said that it was led by a man. And Dr. Calvin said, well, who is that man? And he said it was him. And then, but then in the end, Dr. Calvin destroyed LVX. And so when I was telling that story to the guys, I'm like, what do you think about the story? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so LVX was born with and then also we liked how it had the name X too, following, CXM.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how we started to proceed with, the obvious naming conventions of if people know about Mercury 7, about a reverb pedal, then we now have Mercury X, and then now we have Enzo following the original Enzo to Enzo X.
Mm-hmm. That makes a ton of sense. I did not know for sure that's where it came from, but I had a sneaky suspicion that that's where it came from because I was familiar with that story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm a big nerd. So like I pick up on things sometimes. But yeah, it's I don't know. Those three, and I'm still learning to the Enzo.
Awesome.
But what I love
is there a preset that you love? Or
I'm trying to remember what one I used on the lead of my little trailer demo thing I did for you guys. I used
it great, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Because it was like very kind of brassy, but also obviously synthy. Like some synths are trying to mimic brass and then they sound actually like brass. And I liked that this one was very much, I think it was a mono. I can't remember which patch it is. If I turn it on, it will say, because it's the last thing I used it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
But I liked that because it was like responding kind of. If people didn't realize what was going on, you can kind of see my fingers in behind the images and stuff that were going on. And if you didn't know better, you might think that it was slightly delayed. And that was actually just the response time. So when I lined it up, I was like, oh, it actually looks like I'm playing like slightly ahead of what the sound is. And I kind of liked how off-putting that was for the vibe of the video. It was like things aren't quite right type of thing. And so yeah, right now that's my favorite, but I couldn't tell you. But I can tell you that the Mercury X specifically for the weird kind of music that I make, it's like replaced half of my chain. Like I just don't need a bunch of stuff anymore. I can find a patch in here or modify a patch in here to get me to the place I'm trying to go. That one has really changed the game for me personally. And I'm looking forward to diving into Enzo more deeply and seeing what I can pull out of there and what kind of
awesome
creepy sounds I can make. The ARP stuff's really fun, but I'm not like good enough to use it properly, I feel like, yet. I'll just like be out here just like just like for like an hour and I'm like, I don't know if that's usable, but I sure had a good time. And then
sometimes people, you lay that down as a texture, and then do some kind of like lead, playing over it maybe.
I thought about doing that with the bass parts in that song, but I ended up going for a more droney thing. Just because I thought it felt a little more on brand, I guess, if you want to say, for the images I was picturing in my head. So
that's so cool.
It's just one of those late night, whatever flops out of me things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Real, yeah, you're the best, Blake.
Oh, thank you. No, you are. You're the best. So we're getting close to the end of the main episode here, and normally I would be talking about some boss pedals and stuff, but that's not your area of expertise. So I thought about modifying the final questions a little bit.
Okay.
But before we get into those, this is, you're talking to a few thousand people right now. You can shout out anybody you want to shout out, say hi to your aunt or, plug anything you want to plug. Like the floor is yours right now.
I mean, first and foremost, Tone Mob. All the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I got to say to everybody out there, Blake is the coolest, most kind-hearted person in this industry. I got to say that. And, nobody's talking about Blake. Let's talk about Blake.
You're going to make me blush.
It's true. It's true. So this is my first time being interviewed. I've been really shied away from it. Never felt worthy of being interviewed. So thank you so much. But yeah, Blake all the way, Tone Mob. But
thank you for finally doing it. I've been looking forward to that.
Yeah. But yeah, for those who have never tried us out, please do try out Meris and go to www.meris.us and check Enzo X out.
There you go. Do it. Get inspired. It's fun. All right, we'll go on. I won't call this the classic questions necessarily, but we'll call them the final questions. One of them is the classic question, but
okay.
Instead of asking you what your favorite boss pedal is, I thought about this for a while because I wanted to figure out like, what should we get into here? That doesn't really apply. But I think I've landed in a good place, and I want to know who are some of the people. This is like for the branding and ad nerds out there.
Okay.
Who are some of the people in the branding and advertising world that you look up to or think people should go check out? Because unless you're very into that stuff, most people have seen an Ogilvy ad and they don't know what an Ogilvy is, who that is, like. So do you have anybody that you think people should check out?
Yeah, there's advertising agencies that I've worked with, Shia Day, you mentioned Ogilvy. But I would want to mention more of the actual graphic designers.
Yeah, let's do it.
That I really looked up to. So I love Manfred Moore, number one. I think I mentioned before that I'm a minimalist at heart. And so he is the godfather of digital art in 1960s. Maybe 69 or 70s. But he's pretty much like the artist that kind of made it look like it was algorithmic art, but it's all black and white. And a lot of times I'm very inspired by, those are my favorite colors, black and white. And so I just love his work. I also like Jurian Schrofer too. So he's like computer art before the computer existed.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's like, like graphic design that was all analog. And then Mark Nizam too. He does a lot of abstract work. It's just like all of these designers are very pure. It's very binary. And I'm very inspired by that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad I asked that question. I got some stuff to check out later. All right. Final question. And this is a classic question.
Okay.
What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Yeah, I knew you would ask that. So I haven't had pizza regularly lately, but during the pandemic, I was making, can I toot my own horn here?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I was making pretty damn good pizza, I think. And if I have the opportunity to make you some pizza, I might feel self-conscious because you are the king of pizza. But
well, I'm not the king of making pizza.
I thought you make some pizza.
I've made it. I have made it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely not the king of making pizza. I'm just very good at eating it and giving my opinion on it, which is, maybe not a skill.
So if you guys like recipes and stuff like that, I really love this Bobby Flay pizza recipe where you actually cook the crust in the barbecue first.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds fun. I've done
so
things
it's very
like that
crispy.
Before. Yeah.
And then I kind of do a twist because I add cornmeal.
Oh, I like
to
that.
It. Yeah. So it's got that texture too. But if it's not just me, I would say my number one favorite is my brother-in-law who makes, this is weird. It's going to sound weird, but he makes vegan pizza. And I'm the classic girl. I love just the classic pepperoni.
Yeah.
With cheese.
Yes.
Like if someone asks me, okay, what pizza do you want? I just want just the classic. But he made this pizza with hummus and pesto and sun-dried tomato and arugula.
That sounds good actually.
With like pine nuts.
Yeah.
And it's so delicious. It's the best pizza I've ever had.
I can get down on that. I like meat. I like eating a lot of meat, but that sounds really good, actually.
It was amazing.
I like the sound.
Yeah, and no cheese, no meat, and it blew my mind.
I can totally see that. Sometimes I've seen some vegan pizza. I had a bite of some vegan cheese the other day. I'm sure there are better ones. Don't get me wrong, but this one was not, whatever it was was not.
Yeah, this wasn't even fake cheese. It was
Yeah.
just like hummus and pesto.
I think that's my thing. If you're gonna
me
not
too.
do it, just lean into the ingredients that you have. Don't
I
try
agree.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes more sense to me.
That's a debate too. That's a debate. Yeah, me and Terry. Yeah, that's a debate.
Is it?
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
All right. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of shenanigans we can get into on Patreon.
I feel really lucky to have this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is good times. All right, everybody. For Jinna, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, there you have it. There's another episode in the can. Yeah, I'm back out here under the little, tin roof thing. It's the best place I could find. The family's getting ready for bed. It's 11:36 p.m. here on the West Coast, the literal West Coast, almost as far as you can get before I actually literally drop into the ocean West Coast. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Jinna and I get into some weird alien type stuff over on Patreon. So if you want to hear that and you want to support the show and you want to help the goings on over here, please go to patreon.com/tonemob, where for $5 a month, you not only get the ad-free feed for this episode and all other episodes, you also get the bonus content that gets delivered to your ears every week. And I've got some really juicy stuff coming up in that regard. So hopefully enjoy it. And again, shout out to Nick from Playback Engineering. If you need podcast editing, he is the man to go to. He's been helping out this show for years and oftentimes is the deal breaker between whether this comes out on time or not. So thank you, Nick. This is one of those times. Really appreciate you, dude. And appreciate all you for listening. And go check out Meris. If you're not familiar, this is one of the most groundbreaking pedal companies out there. I really love what they do. They are somehow able to just condense so much stuff into a form factor that you can actually understand. I mean everything I say when I rave about Meris. I love Meris. The people are amazing. The products are amazing. Go check out Meris if you haven't already. And I think that's it for now, because it's very cold out here and it's very wet, as you can hear with the rain and all that stuff. Anyway, I will talk to you all on the internet very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.